There are evenings that look completely ordinary. You're sitting alone at the table, a simple meal in front of you, the fan humming softly, your phone resting next to the bowl. You check a message, no argument, no shouting, just a calm, smooth sentence. You're overthinking. You read it, and suddenly your chest feels a little heavier. Your stomach tightens. Not pain, just discomfort, like someone pressed on something vague inside you. If you've ever felt that, listen carefully. You're not crazy. There is a reason for it. People call this type a high-functioning sociopath. It sounds dramatic, but in real life, they rarely look like villains. No chaos, no violence. They go to work, speak well, know when to smile. They're like a beautiful car that runs smoothly. The only problem is the brakes aren't connected to empathy. And unfortunately, you only realize it after you're already sitting in the passenger seat. If I had to explain it with something ordinary, dating a high-functioning sociopath is like drinking a perfectly brewed cup of coffee. The first sip feels warm. The second wakes you up. By the third, you notice you can't function without it. The coffee itself isn't wrong, but when your body starts needing it just to feel normal, something has shifted. These people don't need to scream or threaten. They simply train you to accept that your emotions always come second to their goals. In romantic relationships, it often starts fast. They look at you and say the exact words you've been waiting to hear. You think, finally, someone understands me. They remember how you like your coffee. They remember your fear of abandonment. They notice how you go quiet when you're hurt. But this isn't empathy in the usual sense. It's data collection, mental notes, like reminders saved in a phone. And your body responds before your mind does. Your heart races when they disappear without explanation. Your shoulders tense when they smile, but their eyes don't. Slowly, your nervous system learns a dangerous rule. Peace depends on reading them correctly. So you adopt, you anticipate, you become careful. What makes it harder is that they are excellent at appearances. In public, they're charming. They say the right things at dinner. They put an arm around you at the right moment. But behind closed doors, under the kitchen light, you find yourself explaining your feelings, defending your reactions, proving that you're not too much. You say, "I'm hurt." They reply, "Because of that?" And little by little, you start doubting your own perception. This pattern doesn't live only in love. Many people grew up with parents who said, "I'm doing this for your own good," or work under a boss who stays calm and logical while quietly shifting all the risk onto you. The common thread is simple. Your emotional reality is treated as secondary. Results, image, efficiency, those come first. And you're left wondering, maybe I really am too sensitive. You're not. You're responding normally to an emotionally unsafe environment. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do: survive. Stay quiet to keep the peace. Bend a little to avoid conflict. You're not weak. You're trying to maintain connection. Let's pause here. In the next part, we'll talk about the subtler signs and, more importantly, what you can actually do to stop adapting yourself to exhaustion. No dramatic exits, no loud confrontations. Just learning to trust that small, tight feeling in your chest, the one that knew something was wrong long before you had words for it. At this point, a familiar thought usually shows up, very quietly. But they do care, don't they? Maybe they just don't know how to express emotions. No one's perfect anyway. That voice isn't denial. It's attachment talking. Because here's the thing we don't say out loud enough. A high-functioning sociopath doesn't feel empty. They feel entitled. Entitled to outcomes. Entitled to loyalty. Entitled to access. What they lack isn't intelligence or charm. It's the internal brake that says, "I should stop because this hurts someone." And you can feel that options in very specific moments. You notice how conflicts never really resolve. They just end, usually when you give in. You notice how apologies, if they appear at all, feel oddly hollow. The words are right, the tone is calm, but something in your body doesn't settle. It's like being offered a blanket that looks warm but doesn't hold any heat. And here's the part that's uncomfortable. They are often incredibly consistent, not in care, but in self-interest. When something benefits them, they're present. When it doesn't, they disappear, deflect, or suddenly become busy. You find yourself staring at your phone, rereading old messages, trying to figure out which version of them is real. Both are. That's what makes it confusing. This dynamic shows up outside of dating too. Maybe you had a parent who never raised their voice, never hit, never exploded, but somehow every decision still bent toward what they wanted. Or a manager who speaks softly, praises publicly, but privately shifts blame and pressure downward. The pattern is always the same: calm exterior, strategic interior, and you carrying the emotional weight. When you try to name the discomfort, resistance appears. You're too sensitive, you're imagining things. Why do you always make this a problem? And slowly you stop bringing things up. Not because you agree, but because your nervous system has learned that speaking costs too much. Let's be very clear about something. If someone hurts you once and recognizes it, that's human. If someone hurts you repeatedly and calls it misunderstanding, that's a choice. You didn't miss the signs because you're naive. You missed them because your nervous system prioritized connection over clarity. That's not stupidity, that's biology. So what do you actually do, practically, quietly, without blowing up your life? You slow things down, just a little. 2 seconds before replying, long enough to feel your body. Tight chest, shallow breath, that's information. You start writing things down, not to build a case, just to see patterns. What was said, what happened after, how you felt. Gaslight loses power when reality is recorded. You stop over-explaining. High-functioning sociopaths don't need more context. They already understand. What they test is how much access they still have. And maybe the hardest part, you allow yourself to disappoint them. Not dramatically, not angrily, just calmly. Because people who rely on your flexibility will always react when it disappears. If you're listening to this and something feels quietly relieving, like a knot loosening, that's not coincidence, it's recognition. You're not broken, you were adopting. If you feel comfortable, write in the comments a sentence you've heard too many times, something that made you doubt yourself. You don't have to explain, just write it. You'll see how many others recognize it too. And if this kind of conversation makes you feel a little more grounded, stay. Not because you need fixing, but because learning to trust yourself again takes space, and you're allowed to take it.